Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, which means that the first quarter of the year is almost done. Holy crap. Though it was snowing this morning here a little earlier, so I don't think it's quite spring yet. Just saying. Not what we're here to talk about, but these little meditations upon time and space and reality are fun for me. So I guess that's something. What we're here to talk about today is finding your path and walking it. And this is, again, something that comes out of my own experiences because I did not and have not followed a traditional path in any sense of the word. And suffered a lot of angst because of it, and at times in my life wished that I could have wanted to be a teacher or a nurse or a lawyer or something that had you go to school here, you do this, you work here, there's a path, there's a way that if you follow this, you're probably going to get to some aspect of what it is that you want. Now, whether that actually turns out to be suited to you or what you end up doing at the end of things, who knows? But at least there's signposts that you can look at and go, okay, this is the way I need to go. I never did that. And my my path has been circuitous at best. I've kind of wandered and fallen into things and gone, oh, I'm not really that bad at this. I'm actually kind of good at it. And always somewhere in there has managed to be writing because I bring it into everything I do, because that, I think, at the core of everything for me is writing. That's what it is. So that somehow manages to go into everything that I do. But here's the thing. Finding your path is hard. Following your path can be hard. And for a lot of us, we hit midlife and we go, I wish I'd done that thing. I wish that I had pursued playing in that band. I wish I had gone out for that team. I wish I had tried for that job, because we get to midlife and we look at things and we go, well, I got some of the stuff that I wanted. I did some of the things I hoped I would do, but I haven't done them all, or I haven't done enough of them. And here I am now, and I am looking at my life and realizing that there's less life ahead of me than there is behind me, most likely. So I need to figure out what it is that I want to do and what matters to me and what is the legacy that I want to leave when I'm no longer here. And that, I think, is when following your path maybe becomes even more important, because there aren't that many chances left. And I don't want to be a bummer about this, but it's just reality. I'm 54. Unless I live to be 104, which, okay, given the longevity of women in my family, is not outside the realm of possibility, but is probably unlikely. I have less life ahead of me than I do behind me. And honestly, a lot of my life behind me, I feel like I wasted a lot of it being scared, being lacking self-confidence, believing people who told me I couldn't do things, believing people who told me I shouldn't do things. So all of that got in my way of following my path. So that's part of following your path, is not listening to junk advice that people give you. And we'll talk about that. But let's get started with this so you aren't listening to me rambling anymore. So the first thing that you have to deal with when you're trying to figure out what your path is, and that's where we're going to start, because until you know what your path is, you can't follow it, obviously. That seems like a no-brainer, but sometimes it's not. But the first thing you need to do is deal with uncertainty. And what I mean by that is, when you find your path, you may have a lot of people who tell you that path isn't a viable path, or that path isn't a path that's going to work for a lot of people. When I was 6 years old or 7, somewhere in there, I wrote my first story. And that was after the penny dropped that, oh, people can do this and get paid for it. And I taught myself to read at 4. I knew that I loved stories from like the minute I figured out how words worked. I was like, I love this. This is something I can do. And as soon as I started saying I want to be a writer, pretty much what I heard from almost everybody was, oh, that's really a hard profession. Most people don't make it. Most people never make any money. For everybody who's a selling author, there's like a million people who are, sitting around in a garret somewhere starving. They didn't use the word garret because most of the people I knew wouldn't, but they're sitting around or they're working minimum wage jobs to try to keep themselves fed while they wait to be a success. So I'll be honest, it scared me off for a really long time of putting it out there that this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be, because I kept getting told this isn't something that most people are successful at. This isn't something that most people can do. And granted, there were people in my life, my beloved maternal grandmother, Grandma Leona, who backed me like 1,000,000% and told me I could do anything I wanted to, and told me pretty much every time she saw me that she was waiting to read my book someday. And so there were people who believed me and supported that this was the path that I wanted to take. But I had a lot more people telling me, this isn't going to work. You're not going to make any money doing this. You're going to starve. You're going to have to. And you get older and you start looking at, well, what's practical and what's, what you should be doing. And so I kind of I never really dropped the idea. I was always writing. I have like half-finished novels you don't even want to know. So I was always doing it, but my degrees are in business and marketing. I worked as a marketing director for a really long time, and writing was always part of what I did, but I wasn't pursuing it full bore, so to speak. So that was rough because I didn't want to deal with the uncertainty. And that's the thing. When you're trying to find your path, there might be something, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there might be something in you that says, I'm supposed to be a dancer, or I'm supposed to be a singer, or I'm supposed to make stained glass, or whatever it is. And it's not something or it could be something that says, I'm supposed to be an attorney, and nobody in your family has ever gone beyond the 10th grade. Or it could be, I'm supposed to be a nurse and you're scared of blood, or whatever it is. And people will tell you, well, you can't do that. It's not going to work. You're not going to be able to make this work for you. And sometimes there's just uncertainty in the job market, or is this a job that's going to, especially with the rate of change today and the rate of technology, is this a job that's going to be around in 5 years? Am I going to go through all this and learn to do something and love it, and then find out that it's not a viable skill set anymore? So there's a lot of uncertainty you have to deal with. And I think part of how you know that the path is the right path for you is, even with all the uncertainty and even potentially with all the people discouraging you, you still want it. It still calls to you. You still look at it and go, this is the thing. And like I said, even though I've had, a ton of jobs that didn't specifically have writing in the title or maybe require writing has always snuck into whatever I've done. And I'm good enough at it that the people who were my employers at the time were willing to let it sneak into whatever I was doing because I was good at it. So you have to watch that too, I think, a little bit. If certain things keep sneaking into every job you have, if you keep doing certain things over and over and over, then maybe that's a sign that this is something that you should be doing. And I want to talk about that a little bit. You need to connect the dots. You need to take a look at the patterns in your life. And if you remember when you were a kid, connect the dots is, they have the dots that are in a shape and you draw lines between them all and it forms something, a person or a dog or a house or whatever it is. And when you're looking at your life, you can see the same sorts of dots, the same sorts of signposts. Hey, every job I've had, I always did X thing. Or, hey, when I'm allowed to choose what I want to do, these are the things that attract me. Or I'm really happy when I do this. And if you start looking at your life, most people will see patterns. They'll see things like, hey, I'm really attracted to creative things, or I really am attracted to the textile arts, or I really like words and I'm happiest when I'm writing your stories. Or when I was a kid, I used to tell stories to all the neighborhood kids, which I did all the time. I used to tell stories to my cousins when we get together for family reunions. It was just something I did. And I had the capacity to make up stories. So when I started connecting the dots, which honestly, this was not like, oh, revelation, but hey, I like words. I like stories. I like making people happy and excited. And I like it when they're hanging on my every word to see what happens next. This is something that's important to me. And again, connecting the dots is one of those things where a lot of people live, how do I want to put this the right way? A lot of people live really unexamined lives. And that's a lot of the time because they're busy. It's a lot of the time because they have a lot of other things capturing their attention. And so they don't really stop and look at their own lives and try to see the patterns. And maybe they don't really have the luxury of making a choice. If you have children and a house and you're worried about feeding everybody and keeping the heat on, then you're not really going, gee, I wonder what my path is. You're going, where can I make enough money to make this happen? And if the job isn't particularly something that you love, hey, it's a paycheck. It keeps you housed and fed. I have been there. But if you have the luxury of taking some time to look at your life, and if you realize that where you are isn't necessarily where you want to be, one of the sayings that always makes me laugh a lot is, if you feel like you're stuck, remember you are not a tree, you can move. And the first time I saw that, I started giggling like a lunatic, honestly, because there was just something so perfect about that. That no, I'm not stuck in one place. I might think I am. I might think there's no choices. And that's not to say that the choices that there are might not be difficult. I mean, if you're working as a secretary and you decide you want to be a lawyer, you may have to work full time and go to school at night. I'm not saying that's easy. I did it. It's hard. It's hard. It's tiring and it takes a lot out of you. I wasn't a secretary wanting to be a lawyer, but I had a full-time job and got my degrees at night and on weekends. Because that's how it worked out. That's how it had to be. So I'm not saying that the choices are easy, and I'm not saying that the choices are going to be pleasant always. Sometimes your choices, if I want to be the person that I know I should be, then I need to drop these relationships. I need to get out of this romantic relationship. I need to drop these friends. I need to stop going to these places. All of that is not easy, but this is the kind of stuff you figure out when you start connecting the dots. If you decide, I want to be a textile artist, what's keeping me from being a textile artist? Well, I spend 3 nights a week at the bar drinking, and then I feel like crap the next day. And so I don't want to do whatever, I don't want to take the classes I need to take, or I'm spending all my money on other stuff and I'm not spending it on fiber. So, there you go. And that's like, I get that's an awkward example, but when you start connecting the dots, you start seeing that You start seeing where your path is, and maybe you start seeing where your path isn't. If you keep saying you want to do something and you never do it, then do you really want to do it? If you keep saying that you want to do something, but you're not willing to make any sacrifices to do it, do you really want to do it? When you start connecting the dots, you'll start seeing these patterns. And the patterns will tell you a lot of the time what it is you want to do and what it is you don't want to do. And sometimes it'll tell you that a dream that you cherished and thought that you really, really wanted, maybe you don't. I mean, this is a simplistic, I fully understand. There could be layers upon layers of why you do or don't do something. And there's lots of things that can impact that. But I'm just saying, start looking at the patterns, start connecting the dots. And maybe that will point the way to your path. And maybe it'll point out some reasons why you're not following it. So take a look. Next thing, when you're looking for your path, experiment. And by experiment, I mean, try a whole bunch of stuff. Just try everything. Anything that sounds appealing, anything you think you might like, anything you think would be interesting, anything that anybody asks you to do that's, legal, moral, and not harmful mentally or physically. Just experiment. I think we lose the ability somewhere probably in adolescence to just try stuff for the sake of trying it. Without ego, without worrying what people are going to think, without feeling like it's life or death. Just, hey, I'm trying something. I think in adolescence, I mean, let's face it, most of us were, wearing our hearts outside our bodies, and we were gigantic, sensitive tuning instruments who were embarrassed by everything. And if you were an awkward adolescent, which I was, it was even worse. So you lose the ability to just try something because it's fun, or try something because it looks interesting, or try something because the chance is there to try it. And what happens when you experiment is maybe you find a way to your path that you weren't aware was there. Or maybe you find out that there's this entirely new path that you never even knew existed, that you're really, really excited about. And you don't know that if you don't try. And I think that, for me, that's one of the things that makes me the saddest about when I was young, is I was so scared of screwing up. And I was so scared of disapproval. And I was so scared of not being whatever it was that I thought I was supposed to be, that I didn't experiment a lot. I was a very, very rigid person back then, because a lot of reasons which aren't relevant to here. But the time when most people would say is the like optimal time to experiment, I didn't. And so now I'm at 54. I'm kind of going, well, let's try some things and see what happens. Now, in my case, I don't have kids. I don't have a romantic partner at the moment. So I can pretty much do what I want, because it's not going to impact anyone. But I understand people who have families and they have responsibilities and they have people depending on them. It's a little different situation. But I do think experimenting is important, and I think we shouldn't lose that spirit of experimentation, that spirit of let's give it a try, that spirit of who knows, I might like this. Now, sometimes you're going to try something and it's going to be, I didn't enjoy that. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. And please keep in mind that you can enjoy something and not be good at it. That's another thing that I needed to learn. I think it's another thing that a lot of people need to learn. You can stink at something and really, really like it. You don't have to be like amazing at everything. Like, I play piano badly, really badly, and haven't for a really long time. But I always liked it just because it was the ability to make music. And when I could get all the pieces of it together, to make the music come out the way that it should, that was such a rush. And so I was never going to be a virtuoso. And back then, that really mattered to me because I knew virtuosos. I knew people who were like amazing instrumentalists and really, 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 really talented. And I knew I could never get there. And back then, it was an either or proposition for me. It was you have to be amazing or you should just stop doing it. And so I stopped doing it, which now I'm sad because if I had kept on, I would have been decent. I wouldn't have been amazing, but I would have been decent. But instead, I went, oh, not going to be amazing. I have to stop. So experiment with things and be comfortable with not being great at things. If you want to play tennis, play tennis. And if you miss, 5 balls out of every 8 that are hit to you, so what? Play basketball, even though you're 5'2". Do what you want to do. Try things. You never know what's going to be the thing that lights a fire. And I think we shut things down too soon because we're worried we're going to look stupid, because we're worried that it's not going to go anywhere, because we think that everything should lead to money or prestige or something. It doesn't have to. It can just be a thing that you do. And sometimes finding a thing that you do will lead to a business or a path or a job or something. And sometimes it's just a thing that you do that brings you joy. And I don't know when or why something that brings you joy became a waste of time or something you shouldn't do. But I think we need to get over that because honestly, I think all of us could use a little more joy in our life. So again, something to think about. Next thing, does not want to do what I want it to do. There we go. Listen to your gut. Oh man, I struggle with this one so hard because I know what I should be doing. I do. And I don't do it. And there's a lot of reasons why, which I'm not going to go into here because we only have an hour and this is not about my life. But I think a lot of people have this. Either they've been told that whatever they want is not going to work for some reason. They've been told they're not suited to whatever they want. They've been told that they should be tending to these responsibilities and therefore they can't do what it is they want to do. And sorry, I have to keep going for the water, but as usual, my voice. So listening to your gut is basically when you're doing the things that you love or when you're on your path, your body and your spirit, and I don't want to get too new agey here, but I think it's true. Your body and your spirit will know it, will understand it, will feel it. When I'm writing and it's going well, or even when it's going bad, when I'm writing and it's not coming out the way I want it to, I will often snap in and realize that I'm humming. And I only do that. It's kind of like a cat's purr for me. When I'm humming, when I'm doing something, I'm really in the moment and I'm really happy. And it's just random. I'll hum some song or it's just me vocalizing. Doesn't even have to be a tune. But that's kind of my signal that, okay, all the lights are green and I'm happy with what's happening. And writing is probably one of the times that happens most, where I'm just like, everything is green in my world. All the lights are green. I'm just pleased with the state of things. When you find situations like that, pay attention to them. Your gut is trying to tell you something. And it doesn't have to be humming. Maybe you just smile more, or maybe you just feel more buoyant, or maybe time goes faster. That's another thing that happens when I write. I'll look up and 2 hours will have gone by and it will feel like 15 minutes because I was so into what I was doing. And maybe that happens when you do embroidery or you digitize a design or you clean your house or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. The thing that matters is how you feel when you're doing it. And so you need to listen to your gut in those situations. You also need to listen to your gut if it's telling you something is wrong for you. This is a hard thing too, because we want to, sometimes we think we have to do things, I guess. We want to be a good person, a good citizen, a good parent, a good daughter, a good sister, a good aunt, whatever it is, a good brother, a good son, you know the drill. And so we don't listen to those little signals in our bodies and our minds that are saying, this is not for you. This is not right. You don't want this. And we need to listen to those more. That's not to say that sometimes you don't have to do things you don't want to do. Sometimes you're going to have to do the thing that your gut is telling you isn't necessarily the thing you should be doing. There's also reality, and reality is that we all have responsibilities. But as much as you can, try to listen to what your gut is telling you. Try to listen to what you know deep down in your soul. And sometimes that means getting somewhere, being quiet, asking yourself, what is it I want? What is it I need? And then really pay attention to the answers. And yes, I know that's not always easy. And I know that you don't always have the luxury of being able to follow what you discover. But at least if you know, you start trying to get to those places. If you're ignoring it, if you're just not doing anything about it at all, then you're never going to get to where you want to be. And I can see from the indicator I'm getting that my internet is deciding to be fluctuating, annoying, basically. So I do apologize if this video is going in and out. I hope it's not. And finally, when you're looking for your path, know that your path is unique. Nobody else is going to follow the exact same path as you. Nobody's going to have the exact same steps. That doesn't mean you can't learn from other people who are following similar paths. That doesn't mean you can't ask for advice. That doesn't mean you can't talk to people who are following similar paths. But just be aware that your path is unique to you and it's suited to you. And be okay with that. Because I think sometimes people, especially if they're following a path that leads to a more traditional sort of career, like teacher, lawyer, doctor, whatever it is, they want their path to be, and thank you, Cindy. Cindy just said it's perfect on her side. Glad to hear that. Some people want their paths to be predictable. They want their paths to be something that they can go, okay, well, I know how this goes and I know how to get to where I want to go. And I totally get that. But everybody's path is unique. Everybody's path is unique to them. And your path may have twists and turns that somebody else's path won't. But that's okay. You don't have to do what everybody else does. So keep that in mind. Now, say you found your path and you're on your path and you're doing what it is that you want to be doing. How do you handle that? Because that can be pretty scary if you're living your highest purpose. Especially if you've spent a lot of time maybe denying what your path was or doing other things because you had to or because circumstances dictated that or whatever, and then you finally get on your path. And you're on your unique path and you're experiencing your unique journey. And it's scary. And it can be stressful. And it can be, a lot of times people try to sell the whole path idea as it's just bliss. You find your path and suddenly all the problems that you ever had go away. I mean, you're still you. The world is still the world. Things will happen. So you need to be aware of that. Don't expect that once you find your path, whatever it is, that it's going to be pure bliss. It would be lovely if it was, but the likelihood is it's probably not going to be. So the first thing that you need to consider when you're following your path is don't compare your path with anyone else's. And that makes me laugh because if I could, well, no, that's not true. There are a lot of things that I would banish from human beings if I could. But one of the things that I really would like to banish from human beings is comparison. Because I think comparison is so bad for all of us. I really, really do. Because you tend to, generally, when you compare yourself to someone else, you're doing it for one of two reasons. Either you feel like you're less than, and you're hoping that if you compare yourself to someone else, you'll feel like you're more than, or you feel like you're more than and you're comparing yourself to someone else to confirm that you're more than. And when you start comparing yourself to other people, what happens is it's a zero-sum game, basically. If your self-esteem is so low that you need to put down other people to make yourself feel better, then you have much bigger problems than the path that you're on. If you always are comparing yourself to others and coming out on the losing side, then you're not doing yourself any favors either, because your path is not anybody else's path. The way they go about it, if they go faster, if they go slower, if they go right when you go left, that's just part of the process. It doesn't matter. And nobody else is you. And I think that's something that's really kind of important to remember. We're all individuals. We're all unique. We're all going to do things in our own way. And just because somebody else gets more accolades or more awards, or they get jobs a little faster, or they get further along the path than you do, or whatever it is, doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. Doesn't mean that your path is wrong. It just means that their circumstances and their personality is different than yours. Now, I will say, you can look at how other people are doing things and get ideas about ways that maybe you could do what you're doing better. If you're watching other people and they seem to be getting further along similar paths than you are, then you can ask, why is that? And that's not comparison. That's, what are they doing that I'm not doing? What are they doing that maybe I could do that could get me further toward where I want to go? If I want to write a short story and I want to get published in the New Yorker, then I need to look at maybe people who have been in the New Yorker, and not in a comparison, their story's better than mine, their story's worse than mine, but more in a, how did they get here? What are their credits? What have they done? Where have they been published previously? How many times have they been published? How did they submit, if I can find that information out? So basically, I'm just looking at, here are people who have been successful at something that I want to do, who are following similar paths. How were they successful, and what can I learn from what they did? That's completely different than, oh my God, all these people got published in the New Yorker and I never have been, and my stories must suck, and I'm horrible, and And before you know it, I've got a pint of ice cream and I'm laying on the couch and I never write a story again. It's not worth it to compare yourself to others. There are always going to be people who are doing better than you. There are always going to be people who are doing worse than you. If you need to find the people who are doing worse than you to feel better about yourself, then you have issues to work on. If you're always demoralized by the people who are doing better than you, then you have issues to work on. Because you know what? There's always going to be people doing better than you, and there's always going to be people that aren't doing as well as you. And it shouldn't matter to you. You are on your path. And I get that it's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, it should matter to you. And I'm sure you're probably sitting in your houses going, yeah, and you've never had a moment. Oh, please. I was the queen of comparison. I was the queen of comparison and I always lost. And I resented the hell out of everybody who was doing better than me because life wasn't fair and I got a raw deal and everybody sucked except me, which when I was in my 20s was pretty much what I thought. I have learned since then. I have grown since then. Thank goodness. But comparison, I think, is evil. And I really wish we could all stop it because it never does any good. Now, like I said, there's a difference between comparison and looking at others to try to figure out what they're doing that is maybe propelling them a little faster than you, what you can learn from them. That's a completely different thing. That's not a value judgment. That's not a judgment of any kind. That's just I'm gathering information so that I can learn. I think that's great, but don't compare yourself to others because it's just a losing sum game. And pretty much all that's going to happen is you're going to end up feeling bad about yourself. The next thing, when you're on your path, trust that it's the right path. Trust that it's going to work out. Trust that you know what you're doing. Just basically trust. And I say this in my head, I'm going, oh, hell, that's ironic because you don't trust anything. And my head is totally right. I don't trust anything. Hence why I'm not totally following the path I know I should be following right now. Because trust is hard for me. Trust is hard for a lot of people. And I tend to subscribe to trust but verify, which means I will trust the path. I will trust the people, but I'm going to verify that this is the right thing, that this is the right thing I should be doing, that these are the right people I should be doing it with, that this is the right way I'm going. And if my gut is telling me that maybe this isn't the right way or that I need to change some things about it, then I need to listen to that because I trust my gut too. The one thing I do trust is me. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. I trust myself within limits. I am aware fully that I still am dealing with some damage from various things, that there are coping mechanisms that maybe aren't serving me as well as they could be. I'm aware of that. But overall, I trust myself because I'm 54 years old and thus far I've gotten myself through everything in my life. Now, is my life everything I want it to be? Not even close, honestly. But I'm closer than I've ever been, which tells me that I'm trustworthy because even when I couldn't necessarily believe in the goals that I wanted to get to, I was still pushing myself in that direction. So sometimes trust comes down to just trusting yourself to make the right choices, trusting yourself to be smart enough to learn from making the wrong choices and making mistakes, trusting yourself that you deserve what you want. All those things. Again, not easy. Personally, I think that trust is one of the hardest things in the world. It's a vulnerability and a scariness is the only word I can think of that very few things are. But you have to trust that if you're on a path, it's the path you're supposed to be on. And also trust that if it isn't the path you're supposed to be on, or if your path changes, you'll be able to adapt and you'll understand and you'll make the right choices. Not easy, but necessary if you're going to follow your path. And while you're trusting things, observe yourself. How do you feel? What do you like? Are you happy? How are you acting? Are you more open? Are you brighter? Are you always tired? Are you sad? All these things. And I don't think we observe ourselves enough, honestly. I started a couple months ago, restarted because I've done it off and on most of my life, but I restarted journaling again a couple months ago. And I hadn't realized how much that tells me about what I'm thinking and feeling and what's bugging me and what I want. And it's just, I do like 15 minutes in the morning. I have breakfast and then I sit and I write. And it's just talking about whatever's on my mind that day or what I dreamt about the night before or, what's bugging me or what I hope will happen or whatever it is. And that's been a great way to observe myself. Another way might be meditation. Another way might be just listening to your body. Is your stomach upset? Are your shoulders tight? Do you have a tension headache? All that stuff. All that stuff tells you things. And basically observing yourself is just a kind of fancier way of saying, pay attention to your life. You only get one. Don't live it unexamined. And I don't remember who it was. I want to say it was either Thoreau or Whitman who said an unexamined life is not worth living, but I could be totally wrong about that. So please don't, throw things at me if I just completely misquoted whoever it was that said that. But that's true. Pay attention to what's happening in your life, to how you feel about what's happening in your life, to what you want, all of that. It's important. This is another one. Commit to living your life. And this one, when I typed it in, I went, people are going to roll their eyes and go, am I not living my life? I'm here, I'm breathing. But I am a living example of a person who didn't live her life for a really, really long time because I didn't think people would like the life that I wanted to live, or I wasn't sure of the life I wanted to live. I wasn't confident enough in the life I wanted to live. You only get one. Don't waste it. So commit to living the life that you really want to live, the life that makes you happy, the life that serves others, or the life that puts good into the world, or the life that brings happiness, or whatever it is. A lot of times we just go through the motions. We get up, we take the kids to school, we go to work, we pick the kids up, we come home, we supervise homework, we make dinner, we watch TV, we go to bed. We get up, blah, 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 blah. And for some people, that's perfectly fulfilling and they're totally happy. And I'm not knocking it if that is what your thing, how your life goes and you're perfectly happy with that. But think about adventure. Think about transcendent moments. Think about doing work that really absorbs you and enthralls you. Think about putting good out into the world. Think about the legacy you're going to leave behind. Think about all these things and then commit to living a life that answers your values and answers who you are as a person. Think about what you're going to leave behind because that matters. When you're gone, what is it that you want people to remember? And commit to living those values. And like I was saying in the last little point, pay attention. Spend time in the moment you're in. Marvel over that sunset. Kiss that baby's head. Laugh with your kids. Cuddle with your significant other. Whatever it is. Really cry over that sad TV show or that book or whatever it is. Feel. Have experiences. Store up memories. That's the stuff that's going to be with you long after the tchotchkes you bought are broken and gone. So think about all those things. And finally, understand that your path will have bumps. This circles back to what I was talking about earlier, where there are books out there, Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow is one, that basically imply that once you find your path, everything will be smoothed over and it will be nirvana. And wow, is that an amazing thought? That once you find your path, all the problems and insecurities and issues that you've been dealing with will just be gone and everything will be great. You're still going to be you. Even if you find your path, you're still going to be dealing with the same issues and damage and problems and people and circumstances and everything that you were dealing with before. And some of those might cause bumps. That's all right. It doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. It just means that life comes with bumps. Everybody has them. Even the people you look at and think, oh, they must have like the best life ever. They've got bumps. Maybe they're not your bumps. Maybe you wouldn't consider them bumps, but they have them. So I think this is basically a really long way to say, just be realistic. Don't assume that when you find your path, it's going to be smooth sailing all the way. Now, hopefully when you find your path, something will align and let you know that you're making choices that are good for you, that this is something that you're meant to be doing. But finding your path is not a promise that everything will be smooth sailing and bliss forevermore. You're still going to be dealing with the same stuff you're dealing with. That's what always makes me laugh when people say, oh, I wish I could just chuck everything and go live on an island somewhere. Like all their problems are caused by external forces. No, we take our problems with us because we cause a lot of our own problems. And I know people hate that. I know people hate hearing that, but it's true because we have damage or issues that we haven't dealt with. We have to unlearn coping mechanisms that don't serve us anymore. We have worldviews we have to fix. There's a lot of things that can happen. So wherever you go, there you are. So even if you find your path, or even if you step out of the life you're in and change your name and dye your hair and go somewhere else, you're still going to be you. So be okay with that and understand that a great life isn't a life that never has sadness or pain or bumps. A great life is one where you're doing something that matters to you, where you're happier more than you're not, where you're putting good out into the world, where you're making an impact on people, either because you have relationships with them, or because you're putting what you know out into the world, or because you're creating something that other people are enjoying, whatever it is. And I know a lot of this sounds kind of new agey and whatever, and that's not really where I am. But honestly, a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've learned. And I feel like this is an important one because I bought into, for a really long time, the idea that once I found the thing, then all the stuff that was causing me pain or making me sad or was hard would go away. It's not going to, because it's not about what's out there. It's about what's in here. And that I need to work on, and that I need to fix. So that's the final bit of my message for today. I hope this was helpful. I'm sorry that my internet was funky. I'm sorry that my voice was weird, but I hope you got something out of this today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me as always. And I will be back next week with another edition of Women in Business and something new to talk about. I'll see y'all next week, everybody.